it was a really good time in my life. It was actually just after we had backpacked through Southeast Asia. We went on this backpacking kind of journey throughout Southeast Asia, just like during the middle of the year during business. We ran our business off our phones, and we just were like, no, we want to travel. We don't care about the business really. And it was like also quite an important point. It made us really appreciate how important life was besides business, if you know what I mean, like and what our real passions were. Businesses sure was a passion, but what business enabled us to do was our passion. It enabled us to travel and experience, and traveling and experience is the best thing anyone can do in their lives.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Outcome Podcast. I am your host, Matthew Schiff, and I thank you all for tuning in once again to join me on episode 10 of this particular podcast. I wanted to touch base and unsurface again the conversation which I had with the Future Females team, episode 7 on the Outcome Podcast not too long ago, and for a variety of reasons as well. Just before jumping into what those reasons might be, I thought it'd be apt to give a bit of an introduction to who the Future Females team are, for those who don't know, and just to rehash a bit of what their mission is in the world. Future Females is a movement that exists to connect, inspire, and support current and aspiring female entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs to rapidly increase the number of and the success of these women. This is a remarkable platform that provides an environment, more so now digitally, physically as well as emotionally, where women as well as men can connect with each other and access the resources they need to succeed. The Future Females movement was founded by Lauren Dallas and Serena Bezadinot in 2017, and by the time I'm sure you have listened to this recording, it has grown to over 60 contributors, 3,000 global members, as well as 26 cities around the world. I have no doubt that number has grown almost exponentially by this time. During this terrific edition on the Outcome Podcast, our conversation unpacked a bit more of what the Future Female Movement was about and where Lauren and her team found their niche in a world of entrepreneurship. We also spoke about how the movement engages with their community to create a safe space for women globally, opening up a place where each individual can feel vulnerable, give and receive feedback, as well as share wins and losses alike. This episode dug into some of the psychological frameworks behind women in entrepreneurship and some of the often recurring limiting mental as well as physical factors which were experienced and are currently experienced by these individuals. This episode was not just recorded to highlight the struggles though, because my guests Flora and Sasha at the time were able to provide some great info on how in just over a few years, their business school, mentorship program, and more so now their online events, webinars, and content have been used to combat the above factors. Personally for me, this episode was unashamedly a massive milestone to record last year. And again, I'd like to thank the Future Females team for jumping on board. I hope that you enjoy the episode as much as what I enjoyed recording this. Joining me in conversation for episode 10 on the Outcome Podcast, I have Trent Pike, an exceptionally humble entrepreneur, travel enthusiast, and fellow inner peace seeker in the conversation. Trent has an exceptional story, highlighting not only some of his more recent life challenges and successes, but we actually took a trip down memory lane, as I so often like to do, and unpack much of where his current mental framework around past and present entrepreneurial successes has given him the experiences as well as the skill sets to guide sustainable and consciously minded business development today. In the conversation, you'll hear Trent. He sounds very cool, very chilled, and very calculated in a lot of his responses, but do not let his tranquil demeanor fool you. This man possesses strong liberal beliefs in ethics and environmentalism, encompassing a triple bottom line approach to the value creation he brings to almost everything that he does daily. These were 3 specific topics which we dove a little bit deeper into in our chat. From dropping out of university, creating an exceptionally successful business venture with just 5,000 Rand in hand, being threatened by Instagram for perceived trademark violation, a beautiful awakening after reading the Tibetan book of living and dying, as well as visiting over 20 national parks whilst living out of a travel van in the US for 3 months, Trent and I went on an adventure through time, you could say. As co-founder of Mielie Mailer, his more recent business venture, Trent and his team are looking to bring sustainable packaging solutions to businesses throughout South Africa. What is it that they offer or bring to the market? Well, Trent and his team bring a 100% compostable plastic alternative to traditional delivery sleeve fly bags that could remove up to 50 million single-use plastic bags every year from circulation. Just think about that number. He and his team are thought leaders in sustainability. The sequencing of carbon in these products, as well as plastic replacements, where their recent contribution to the South African initiative to end plastic waste has cemented their position in this. With the belief that the best way to save nature is with more nature, here is another conversation where I was absolutely transfixed. I must let you know that towards the middle and end of the episode recording, Trent and I did run into some technical difficulties where it sounds as if I am cutting Trent off completely in the middle of his sentence or towards the end of his sentence, where during our recording, it did not seem to be the case. So if that does pop up and you do wonder what was going on, I do want to just apologize up front. It has been something that we tried to iron out, but given the sort of situation which it is, I hope that you understand, and that when you do hear that come about, that it's something that you will, if following the conversation, you'll be able to sort of pass on and at least hear where Trent picks up and where I stop asking those questions. I hope that you enjoy. Please welcome Trent Pike. Good morning, Trent. How are you today?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing all right. Thank you so much for taking some time to jump on and have this recording. First one that we're doing at distance. I know initially we were meant to be sitting in the same room.
Yes.
Did the preparation together, and we were all excited. And now all of a sudden, due to the lockdown in South Africa, unfortunately, we're having to do it remotely. But thank you for taking some time to jump on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a surreal time to be alive at the moment.
Completely, hey. It's crazy. I was just saying, we haven't yet killed anyone at home. Everyone's got their space, and it's working out to be fine.
Yes.
So it's challenging. It is, but it's also the presidential speech last night, I think, put things at ease for everybody as well.
I was proud to be South African last night. It was great.
Just an update of where we were, 4 or 5 days into the lockdown.
Yeah.
How crazy was when he explained the guy coming back from Wuhan being on like an 81-day lockdown?
Unimaginable. Imagine 81 days of essential isolation. Like, what do you do with yourself? And you're like, also, these guys were at the ranch, in I think Polokwane or Limpopo. We often talk about it around the dinner table now. We think like, what would this period in history be known as? Would it be hashtag lockdown or hashtag lockdown? Yeah, it's so 2020. I think I read an article which defined, and the author tried to define the generation kind of born into the world after coronavirus or during this coronavirus as Generation C, and how when you look back on history, the world will all be defined as pre-coronavirus and post-coronavirus.
Wild.
And pre-coronavirus will be business as usual, frenetic pace of life, getting stuck in traffic jams, commuting to work, education at schools. And post will be, hopefully, if we have he said, if we have the courage to kind of see this through, but it'll be defined as, a better work-life balance, a less of a separation for children and parents. I think parents will be more involved with their children because children will most likely distance learn more than not, and potentially even equalizing, a lot of things. Education, one of them with distance learning. So I thought that was a super interesting article. And
please share that after this. I would love to see that across my network and get a good read. That's it puts things in perspective, hey? It's really it really, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we were chatting about this in fact last night as well. It's kind of like, I guess where I'm based and located at the moment, I'm privileged in the sense that I am in a home. I'm in an area that it's relatively safe. It's very quiet, and you often hear the odd skipping rope kind of going by, but it's nothing like it's nothing like too intrusive. And there's a lot of awareness, and there's a lot of sort of knowledge around what's actually sort of happening, as opposed to some other areas where, from what I've read and seen, it's just not quite the same. But it's almost quite like how the pandemic has shifted even over the last 5 days or 4 days being in lockdown, where as opposed to it being the concern around a health implication, like this is a virus that could literally kill you that we haven't yet found a vaccine for, it's now more or less around I'm at home for a couple of days and it's cramped, and it's we're worried about the markets, and we're worried about obviously our employment post lockdown, and small businesses are obviously struggling a bit. So it's like there's this period that of like mindset shift that happens. I don't know. I guess I don't know how you feel, and it almost becomes diluted in a way, like what's actually happening in the world. If you're not reading up and you're not seeing the death rates, and you're not keeping in touch with how quickly it's spreading, you very quickly just become like, again, this is the norm. You're indoors now. You have like a routine.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily influenced by it, unless you go to the shops and now you have to have the mask and the gloves.
Yeah. Well, humans are, we're super adaptive, and I think everyone's trying to make the best of the current situation. But talking about, the difference in privilege, I work with a guy who lives in Hout Bay Township. And he said something so small to me. I phoned him, after the president announced lockdown, and I was like, are you going to be okay? Do you need anything? And he said, no, of course not. He's not such a nice guy. But, we spoke about kind of stocking up and on certain essentials. And he was like, he can't stock up. First of all, the president announced the speech before payday, or the lockdown before payday. And basically, most guys who live in informal settlements live hand to mouth. So they don't get paid. They don't have saved that money that they can, quickly just use or dip into savings. And then secondly, he doesn't have a fridge, or doesn't have a big enough fridge. So how does he stock up on food? And we have the privilege of maybe going to the shops once a week or once every 2 weeks. He has to go every day or every second day. So then you watch on the news and you see people not obeying the rules, but that's not a necessity. It's not just, a lot of people are watching that thinking, we doing our part, why aren't they doing their part? But it's actually just a matter of privilege at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, I reckon there's so much we can chat about, that exact topic, which maybe we can come back to towards the end of our conversation. But to gear this more towards you, Trent, thanks so much for taking the time. I already wanted to chat with you, and I think the way in which we were introduced is quite unique. You reached out to us and wanting to share a message around Mielie Mailer and a bit more about yourself, which we will dig right into maybe a little bit later. But I actually wanted to start with a topic which we were briefly discussing pre-recording, chatting about morning routine.
Yes.
Given the time that we're in at the moment, and just sort of trying to keep saying, it sort of dovetails into a little bit what we're talking about now, the privilege of just having things somewhat normalized. In the situation that we're in. You were telling me a story about the difference between monks and normal people, and what they go through, what they experience having cold showers. Could you just rehash and relive that moment again, please?
Sure thing. So, we were talking about, we both take cold showers. I think it's a great thing to do. I know some of the most successful people on the planet, do ice baths and stuff. It's so good at, shocking your body awake. And the story of the monks and the normal people, inverted commas, normal people, or people who don't practice meditation, is they did this study, or this kind of test where they took a group of monks or practicing monks, and they took a group of normal, I'm going to call them like civilians instead of normal people. And the civilians, the experiment basically consisted of them being kind of connected up to a shock device, and been shocked. And then the point was they had their brains kind of being measured for brain activity. And for the civilians, they hooked these people up and said, look, we're going to shock you within the next, 2 minutes. It could happen at any point, but we're going to shock you. And we're basically measuring how your brain responds to this. And as soon as these people were hooked up and told that they were going to be shocked, on the chart or on the graph of pain, you immediately kind of saw it start rising. It had this gradual increase in pain just from anticipation of the shock. Then when they were shocked, it, obviously spiked to its maximum shock level, let's say 100. And then over the next minute or two, it slowly, declined. It was also quite a gradual decline. So if you looked at the graph, it was like a hill, like a big convex hill. Forget my maths from school. Then for the monks, it was a completely different story. They told the monks the same thing. We're going to shock you within the next 2 to 3 minutes. We're not going to tell you when, but we're going to shock you. And the monks, they sat there and their graph was flat, completely flat. Then they were shocked, one straight line up to 100, and then an immediate drop down with no anticipation and no post-trauma, pain at all, which I think is such an incredible illustration of what it means to be present and only to be present, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, and not worrying about the past not worrying about the future and not dwelling on the past. And I think that's kind of that was kind of the point of this study, just to kind of illustrate the difference in how your life can be if you are 100% present versus not living in the moment and, like I said, dwelling on the past and worrying about the future.
Yeah, and I suppose linking that to, why I mentioned obviously the shower part is that, as we're going slowly into winter and the anticipation of the cold shower crashing down into your body as you open the tap can sometimes be daunting enough where you don't want to shower for a couple of days.
Exactly.
There's obviously good merits in that, and there's, I think, variety of health benefits as well, especially for men, I've read.
Yes.
And, we share the same sentiments. Although I've never had that, never read or never heard of that experiment, that study, it's definitely something which I've adapted to over the last couple of years, in fact. I don't remember a time where, or I don't remember when I started it, but it's one of those things where it's like it becomes so part of the routine and it just feels now it feels so good and normal.
And natural, yeah.
I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how you got into that sort of topic, more maybe around like presentism or being present.
Being present.
Is that something that you sort of actively try to include within your day, or is it just something you sort of stumbled across?
I think definitely it was an active kind of thing. With most, I've been known my whole life, let me just go there, to be completely stuck in my head. I'm always in my head, or always was in my head. And I kind of took it as a point of pride when I was younger. I'm always thinking, I'm never really present. And, I think all the time, as does everyone. But, any interaction is, you're almost analyzing and you're thinking and, you're not really there. And this is a big kind of thing that my ex-partner brought up, that I was, always thinking, even when we were traveling to beautiful places, it was like we had the most beautiful scene you can imagine, or the most beautiful vista. And I'm just in my head thinking about the next business idea, about the book I read, and I'm not actually appreciating that beauty. And I started realizing that I didn't like myself for that. How can I be in nature and not actually be fully appreciating what the privilege I have being there? And so I took it upon myself to really try, and that's when it started to be conscious about the beauty I was seeing and the experiences I was feeling. Then when I got back to South Africa, I kind of delved into Eastern philosophy, a lot of Buddhism, a lot of just spiritual learning. And I read a book, I've told you before, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. and it just put into perspective life and death, and a philosophy which was so foreign to me. You know, South African. I went to an all-boys school, Western school. I've been brought up as a westernized person, and then it's just like a philosophy which has got so much truth to it. I couldn't find much fault in what they were saying, and obviously, I think the goal of anyone is to be happy. And the whole journey about being present was this pursuit of happiness, of calmness, of clarity in my life. Being such a heavy thinker can be anxiety inducing as well. You know, you're always worrying, and it was not something I liked. So yeah, I think my journey towards being present was definitely a travel thing, which progressed into a lot of reading and education on a philosophy which was foreign to me.
Yeah. So you mentioned living and dying, which we spoke about last time, and how at that time there are just certain things in life, I think, that hit you at the sweet spot when you need it. Yeah. And it could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a new person in your life.
Exactly.
I've had a variety of like little gems happen to me as well, and it's just so profound. Like you almost can't imagine your life pre that moment in a way.
Yes.
And I loved it because I think we spoke for about like 30 minutes around living and dying alone last time.
We did, yeah.
Which was cool. But is there any other what other resources or what other ways of sort of slowing down or things did you go through to try and be more that present, to try and chase that happiness? You mentioned last as well, you have been very big into your meditation.
Yes.
Maybe we can sort of gear the conversation towards that, if that helps my poorly framed question.
No, it's a great question. It's a great question. I got what you were saying. But yeah, meditation is probably the most profound thing I've ever come across. It's the thing that changed my life the most, actually. And you know, I started meditation. I read on the internet, how do you meditate? And then I read this book, and I was like, you know, how do you meditate? And everyone subscribes all these different techniques. It's like you get overwhelmed. It's like some people say, focus on your breath. Other people say, control your breathing and focus on your breath, which is completely different. One is natural, one is, you know, a little bit unnatural. Other people say, put a deity or focus on some sort of picture. Other people say, recite a mantra. And I was like, well, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I wanted to find kind of a pure form of meditation. And in my research, I came across Vipassana, and I spoke about this with you about a 10-day silent meditation. And that's kind of was a key catalyst in my life towards meditation and towards a quieter life and towards a happier life. And basically the 10 days of silent meditation, it's 10 days of silence. And silence is more than just talking. It's 10 days of minimal interaction with anyone. That includes looking at anyone, making eye contact. Basically, the point is to almost act as if you are alone on the planet. There's no one around at all, and you focus on the practice of Vipassana. And Vipassana, from what I've read and from what I've researched and been exposed to, is almost the foundation of most meditations. It's the meditation technique that Buddha himself, the first Buddha, actually practiced in India 2,500 years ago. And it's a completely secular practice, which I really, really liked. I don't like the idea of kind of any sort of group, religious or political, where they exclude based on differences in beliefs or thoughts, or just physical attributes. So Vipassana is completely circular, and this 10-day course was just so life-changing. It was tough. It was one of the most painful things I've done: physical pain, emotional pain.
Okay,
but I came out of.
Can you like? Sorry, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, or by the sound of things, lack thereof, shoes. Like, why is it? is it because perhaps in today's day and age that I'm assuming here, correct me if I'm wrong, but because we don't know how to slow down for even an hour or 10 minutes at a time, that being still for 10 days is just, it's just really tough, as you say. What makes it so physically and emotionally challenging to do that?
Yeah. So I think, and I was actually thinking about this last night. We go through life, we pride ourselves in being super intelligent, people, humans as a race, as a species, super intelligent. We're above everything else. And we're above everything else because we have conscious thought. And we have free will and we can make decisions unlike other animal species, or so we think. And actually we go through life just reacting basically to situations. You wake up in the morning and you stub your toe, and that sets you off. And then based on that, you break your mug because you're in a bad mood. And then you get in your car and someone cuts in front of you and you start swearing and shouting at this guy in the car. You get to work, you're angry, you send an angry email to a client, etc. It's just kind of this reaction upon reaction upon reaction with no slowdown in thought. So while we think we're super conscious and we think we are thinking and we always making big decisions, we're not really in our day to day. When you take 10 days of silence, or 10 days of inner focus, there are no situations to set off those reactions. So you can't just kind of let life just take you. Life has now almost stopped, and you probably for the first time in your life have free will of where your thoughts are actually going and what your next 10 minutes, next hour is actually going to be. And for me, I think, the act of slowing down. Yeah, we never slow down. We always have a phone, 5 meters away, distracting us. They say, if your phone's on your table, your brain capacity decreases by I forgot the percentage, but 15%. You suddenly 15% less engaged in actually what you do. Just by having a phone in your vicinity, there's always something. There's always someone to talk to. There's always something to look at. There's always something to keep our brains occupied. And 10 days of silence, in wearing, you wear clothes which are completely neutral. You're in a building which has got no pictures, no distractions. And the whole point is that there's nothing external that you can use to kind of use as a crutch through 10 days. And I think we use life's distractions as a crutch to get through life. And slowing down just kind of brings us back to, I don't know if I'm explaining this well. I'm struggling actually.
You've got me entranced, and I think not the only thing, but one of the things that immediately comes to mind is, I can understand now the sheer difficulty, and I can relate to the sort of the being on all the time and the distraction all the time. And I was just, I get the question I was trying to formulate, just while you were listening to you, was like, what is it that you experienced? And if I had to go through the same thing, step for step at the same time as you, how interesting is it that you might come out of the 10 days feeling one thing, and I might come out of the 10 days feeling another thing, but yet we had the same experience. I was thinking about I wonder what someone else, if they had to go through the same thing, are they also chasing a sense of being present, or is it a sense of collective calmness, so that in their day-to-day 11, they now know that life goes back to being at home with the phone and with getting to work, but now they have just a completely different perspective on how to react, quite literally.
How to react, yeah.
Have you found that since returning, that you've been able to maintain that sense of stillness or being present since returning from your Vipassana experience?
Obviously, it's a daily struggle, and we always learning and always improving. I'm going to look back in 5 years, or in a year, 1 year, or in 6 months, and be like, yeah, 6 months ago you're an idiot, Trent. What those thoughts you were thinking, the way you're acting. I can't believe. That's what happens throughout our whole life. But in terms of so the different experiences, actually, there was a guy there who was only there because his fiance said, if you don't do this course, I'm not going to marry you, because made such a difference on my life. I wanted to make such a big difference on your life. No pressure, exactly. But, this guy, such a nice guy, like really, really nice guy, but he didn't embrace the practice at all. He didn't want to be there. He wasn't ready to be there. It has to be a choice you make. So his experience was where mine was 10 days of maybe pain, but it was self-inflicted pain. It was pain with purpose, and it was a beautiful experience. I look back and I'm so fond of the time. He hated it. He told us afterwards, he's like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I didn't want to be I did it for my fiance. And he didn't actually get anything out of the experience, right? He spent 10 days almost wasted, because he actually brought crosswords with him, and he was doing crosswords in his room and stuff, which also goes against the philosophy. My point being, with Vipassana, it has to, or with anything in life, it has to be your choice, and you have to be ready to embrace it. It needs to be the correct timing, as in anything. But then back to your point about kind of day-to-day living, the change has been massive. I'm so conscious about what I'm doing. I can't, and it's quite a shame, I can't watch anything on TV without feeling guilty of my time wasted. It's not about always being productive and always learning, but it's about doing really wholesome things. When I do something, I'm acutely aware of what the kind of outcome will be. I know if I drink too much coffee, for example, such a small example, if I drink 2 cups or I drink 3 cups in the space of an hour, I'm going to feel sick in throughout the whole day. And it might seem like nothing, but before my Vipassana, I drank 2, 3, 4, 5 cups a day, always feeling sick, but never kind of linking the two. What meditation and slowing down does is it allows you to create these links that you didn't see before, to everyday things. And I think, that's the biggest lesson, is kind of the causal linkages you see every day. And then once you know they're there, you're actually able to make change. Knowledge is power. If you don't know what's causing you to feel a certain way, how can you ever change? And slowing down actually lets you figure out the underlying cause of something, and therefore you can make the change.
Yeah, that's. I'm reading this book by Daniel Gilbert called "Stumbling on Happiness," which I'm absolutely in love with.
Yeah,
and what you're saying resonates just so profoundly with me. I read a passage last night, in fact, that said. He said that once you're aware of something, once you experience a certain emotion or a feeling or an experience, you can never unfeel it or unsee it. You might remember how it made you feel in that time, but the experience could never quite be the same again, even if you did it the second time, the same way, word for word, foot after foot. You could never experience it the same way, but then you could also never not imagine not having that experience because you've gone through it. And I guess the relation to what you're saying is like, I suppose I can understand, like the minute you're aware of how you're feeling or you're noticing perhaps who you once were or what used to be a trigger, and now you sort of have the power, you're armed with the tools to like just breathe. It must be quite powerful, and I guess everyone kind of goes through it in their own small, like Vipassana-ish way in life.
Yes, exactly.
A deep breath that one might take is their version of grounding themselves. And is there anything in particular that you do now? Like you mentioned, obviously just being aware, but out of that practice that you had before the 10 days, what is your either your evening routine, or if you find yourself becoming flustered, because we are humans and we're living in very challenging times, what is it that you physically do to like ground yourself or create that awareness?
So my morning routine, I try and have routine. Routine's a funny thing. Routine for me is not doing the same things every day, or the same things in unison every day. It's not because for me, I've always struggled with that. I've always found like, cool, I can keep up a routine, wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do something until 7:30, Monday to Thursday, and then Thursday have a late night, and then my routine's messed up, And as humans, we try so hard to control things that we can't control. But so when I think of routine, I more think of how a routine makes me feel, or how a sequence of pre-planned activities, makes me feel. So I meditate as often as I can. I try and meditate morning and night. But sometimes I don't meditate in the morning and I meditate in the afternoon. Sometimes I don't meditate for a whole day and I meditate, the next day once, or the next day for double the amount of time. Meditation, is what I do what I try and do every day. It's especially on a busy, crazy day. It's, they say you read articles. Sorry, I'm going back and forth with different ideas in my head. You read articles about how good sleep is for you. And sleep is so good for you because it gives your brain the time to reset and process. And when you are awake, your brain's kind of creating all these, they're not toxins, but they're these, it's kind of waste that your brain produces as you think and as you go about your day. And basically sleep allows your brain to kind of get rid of these toxins. I'm using the wrong terminology, so if someone who knows brains,
I think you're doing it right. Don't worry.
So when I used to feel very flustered in the day, I'll be overwhelmed with decisions, I used to actually micro nap and 5 minutes. And I used to just fall asleep because I'm really good at falling asleep. 5 minutes, wake up. And suddenly I felt so much better. And I was like, cool, micro napping is the way. Then, did my meditation, and the premise is exactly the same. I was on the right path. I was on the right idea, which is giving your brain the time to consolidate and reset. Because we are overwhelmed. With micro stresses, as you brought up earlier. So with the whole meditation, meditate as often as I can before important things. Like I meditated before we had this conversation. Meditate before any sort of meeting. And just as soon, I know my body relatively well, so I meditate when I need to meditate. If that makes sense.
Of course.
Then with obviously sleeping, that's probably another thing of my daily routine. I try and sleep for 7.5 hours
just
at least.
Before you sort of veer off of that, I'm curious to know your actual meditation. I'm trying to imagine is it the act of sort of sitting upright, eyes closed, and visualizing what's about to come or what's happened? Or is it more, so as you alluded to earlier, focusing on breathing or controlling your breathing? What is that? I understand obviously meditation is very personal, but what is your particular practice?
So when I meditate, I follow the Vipassana practice primarily, but like I said, I meditate when I need to. So if for example, I'm grappling with some sort of idea or some decision for business, and I grapple with those a lot because I am someone who struggles to make decisions because I worry that it's the wrong decision, as we all do. And the only way to kind of have confidence in anything is research, thought. And if a big decision is on my mind, I'll sit down for up to an hour, on my mat, back up straight in the correct posture. And the correct posture is important because it allows your body to kind of function correctly, the energy to kind of flow. And I think for an hour on that point, no distractions, no phone to distract me, no emails to distract me. It's just, what decision am I going to make? I think through every sort of outcome I can, and I come to decision normally after that period of meditation. That's normally like if I have an afternoon meditation, that's normally what the meditation's about. In my evening and morning, routine, it's a Vipassana practice, and it's a practice which has a couple stages, or two primary stages. One is the focus on breath, and the other is the actual Vipassana technique. And the focus on breath is something I do when I'm struggling with the Vipassana technique, because the Vipassana technique is quite difficult, especially if your mind's not calm. It requires you to be present, and your brain to. It requires you to be present. The breathing is a little bit easier because it's something that's naturally occurring, but I don't control my breath. The point of Vipassana and the premise behind this kind of idea of their meditation technique is to not control and to let things flow naturally. So I focus on my breath as is. And then Vipassana is you do the technique, which is kind of sitting down. You go up and down your body, and you try and feel any sort of sensation on your skin, even inside your body eventually, which sounds super crazy and foreign, and I haven't got there yet. But that's where you want to get. You want to be able to sit down and basically be so entirely present that you can feel every sort of yeah, I have to go deeper. I have to explain. Sorry, before I explain that. They say if you go down to a subatomic level, our bodies are just made out of atoms. And if you looked at a room or looked at anything at a subatomic level, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a lamp and a desk and a wall and a person. It all looks exactly the same. It's all just atoms, essentially. And all of those atoms are in constant flux. They are coming into being and disappearing, and coming into being and disappearing. It's just energy. So when you sit down doing Vipassana meditation, the point is for you to actually get to a level of mind where you can actually just feel those atoms bursting into existence and disappearing from existence. And the point is, it speaks to our impermanence, and every millisecond and every millisecond, we exist and we don't exist, and we are reborn.
Sure.
All the time. Yeah. So that's the point. You want to get to this point where you can just focus on your body and just feel these. It's basically just, I felt it before, not my whole body at once, and not to the full extent as that I want to, but you feel these. It almost feels like pins and needles over your whole body. It's just like beautiful flash of energy, and it's indescribable almost, and you have to experience it yourself.
So the reason I'm so pressing on the meditation and just understanding a little bit more is the first time we had a conversation, and in a bit of preparation I did obviously for our conversation today, I read something that I came across around you had this period in life, we were placed about sort of 4 or 5 years ago, 2015, where after watching a documentary, I think it was Cowspiracy, in fact, you went through this period of like this excessive consumption of information now. And it's like that for a person who has a busy mind, maybe back then, and struggle to slow down, to then even go into more of like this frantic, that there is a calling in a way where I need to adhere to it, and I want to learn more about it, and then I want to do something about it. Is an experience. Yeah. Now you're sort of balancing that, the act of slowing down and trying to be present. I just find that like an incredible experience to listen to. I was hoping that to take a slight segue, we can go back to maybe that period, 2015, and what that particular documentary did for you. And the reason I'm asking is that I think it's going to lead quite nicely into a little bit more about Mielie Mailer, which we'll chat about in a moment. But can you sort of take us back to 2015? What was it the experience of watching Cowspiracy that sort of had a profound impact on you, the same way as reading Living or Dying did, or was it more like a conscious decision, like I need to go cold turkey, and it just has to be done, and that's it, like that's the decision movement?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I was on a, as I've said to you before, I've always cared deeply about the environment. I've always cared a lot about people and the planet and stuff. And my ex-partner, she was vegan, and watching her kind of be the way she was and not eat animals and be fine was always so enlightening to me. I was like, wow, I've just always eaten meat. We know South African brine every Sunday, etc., etc. It's so normal. And it was the start of me questioning something that just seemed the normal, and that's dangerous when we think things are normal and we normalize things. That's when inaction occurs, and that's actually when really bad atrocities occur. We look at slavery back in the day. Everyone thought that was normal, so it was okay. We look at racial segregation, and a lot of people just thought that was normal, and then we committed all those heinous crimes. On a smaller note, obviously. Watching Cowspiracy was just a documentary that came up. It was about the environment and animal agriculture, and I was like, this is something I want to learn about. Thinking, cool, I'm going to watch it and go about my normal life. Watched it, and I think the message was just so clear. I've always been someone who's thought the individual actions we make are so small and inconsequential that what's the point? What's the point of volunteering? What's the point of donating anything? Because your action is so small. Sometimes forgetting about how big collective action is, and it's actually the things that cause the most change. But watching Cowspiracy, it was empowering. It made you realize that a small individual action has insane consequences. I can't remember the kind of the stats right now. It was a long time ago, but they kind of equated you not eating meat or not drinking milk for one whole year equaled X amount of animals' lives that you saved every year. And I was like, whoa, I'm actually responsible for, I don't know, maybe 100 animals a year, let's say. I'm responsible for 100 animals a year that die because I choose to exist in a way that requires them to die for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't need to do that. I don't need to be responsible for 100 deaths. And you could say that point was actually everything I spoke about previously about meditation and about everything else. That point was possibly the starting point of all of that, because the whole point of all of this is to do no harm and to be kind. So Cowspiracy was just this enlightening moment. And it was because of the way they framed it, where they actually quantified the difference you would make by choosing to kind of just change your diet. And ultimately, not everyone can change their diet. It's a privilege to be able to do that. You've got to be able to cook for yourself. You've got to be able to understand nutritional values. You've got to be able to afford supplements and vitamins and stuff and the correct foods. And unfortunately, often healthy foods are more expensive than unhealthy foods. But knowing that I had the privilege to do that, and then choosing to just go ahead and not do it, just go ahead and eat a cheeseburger because I like the taste, didn't compute with my sense of morals. And I was like, I can't. And that was Cowspiracy. It was a cold turkey decision. As soon as I watched it, I was like, no, not watching it again. It happened on the 28th of September. I know the day. It's a day that will, like my meditation, it'll always kind of be a defining point in my life.
Understandably so. There's obviously tons of those types of documentaries that are there to create awareness, and I think really importantly, what they do really, really well is just like the latest one, Game Changers, which focused on obviously mostly athlete performance, being vegan and vegetarian. I think what these things are really, really good for is that it creates conversation, which ultimately leads to some form of consciousness. Again, tying back into that awareness around, you might not necessarily agree, you might not necessarily understand it per se, it might be biased, so you don't have a frame of reference. But what it is doing is that now all of a sudden it's got us talking about it, and it's got a community chatting about it, and it's got people questioning. It's the one question now someone's asking, what does that actually mean, or why do I feel weird about what I just saw, read, heard, or what you're saying? And that's I think those are the reasons that these type of documentaries, if anything, they're really good at achieving. And ultimately, it comes down to the consumer to make that decision. to adhere to it or to make the change or not. But yeah, I guess those things are powerful.
Yeah, I think it's education ultimately, right? Education has led to all change in the whole world. Education has led to the biggest revolutions. So I think as a documentary, it's so powerful because you're educating, and like I said, when you understand causal links, which is education, you can actually start making change in your life and in other people's lives.
So post watching that, you had gone vegan, and you had this sort of consciousness now that you wanted to make a difference. What are the next couple of places where you were in life at that time? Were you studying? Was this amidst your travels? Where in life were you?
I was living in Australia at that point. My previous business with my then partner, Georgie, it was called InstaLens. We were running it from Australia. It was doing incredibly well. Hence the time to watch a documentary. And it was just before we actually gave up the company and went traveling. So it was a really good time in my life. It was actually just after we had backpacked through Southeast Asia. We went on this backpacking kind of journey throughout Southeast Asia, just like during the middle of the year during business. We ran our business off our phones, and we just were like, no, we want to travel. We don't care about the business really. And it was like also quite an important point. It made us really appreciate how important life was besides business, if you know what I mean, like, and what our real passions were. Businesses, sure, was a passion, but what business enabled us to do was our passion. It enabled us to travel and experience, and traveling and experience is the best thing anyone can do in their life. So just after my Southeast Asia backpacking trip, and just before 2 years or a year and a half of constant travel. So it was a
I know you've opened up a can of worms here, because you mentioned a buzzword or a couple of buzzwords that I just get absolutely like geared up for when I hear them, and one of those is traveling. The next is backpacking.
Yes.
I'm fascinated to hear. Firstly, that you were able to at the time run a business off your phone whilst backpacking through Southeast Asia. I think it's an experience not many can relate to. Maybe fantasize and hope for, but not really relate to. And then to go and travel for 2 to 3 years. I think, if I remember correctly, last we spoke as well, a bit of that traveling included you living out of a van. In fact, firstly, for those that just don't know, what were you doing that allowed you to have that lifestyle? What was the business? What is InstaLens?
So InstaLens was a super simple business. It was a business that basically we sold lenses for your smartphone. So they were fisheye lenses, macro lenses, polarizing lenses, telephoto lenses, and they stuck onto any phone. So whether it was an iPhone or whether it was an Android, they went onto the phone and basically enhanced your camera. Now this is before we had dual cameras, or before we had 3 cameras on the back of a phone. And this is kind of just as Instagram was becoming quite a big thing. It was influencers. The word influencer was slowly entering kind of societal consciousness, and filters and stuff. This is when Instagram didn't have stories, and Instagram had a chronological timeline. Back in the day, sure, people listen to this and be like, what is that even? And it's so long ago. But we hit, and we were lucky. Ultimately, we worked hard. We worked extremely hard, but it was all about timing and luck in that sort of sense. And basically, the idea just exploded. My dad lent me 5,000 rand to get started, which is not a lot of money today, and it wasn't that much money then. But we made it work, and we kind of just scaled, and everything we made, we put back into the business, with the idea that we wanted to do something bigger with the money, which was travel. And it started in a market in Cape Town, which was probably the best place to start, and very lucky that Cape Town has a very strong market culture and a very strong tourist culture. And from there, it kind of just exploded. It ran away with us, and yeah, we were able to just do incredibly well. That we could then go and travel.
You were selling it in marketplaces, right next to the mini donuts and the fish and chips across the way, and there was obviously
exactly.
Cape Townians in general, and then obviously tourists that visit Cape Town absolutely love those kind of things. Markets and like quirky little gimmicks go hand in hand.
Exactly.
You assessed that and realized that there was something that you could do to as you say, sell, and you started putting it up online as well. You mentioned there was a company in Berlin, I think, that expressed interest as well. Did it go? It went international, right?
Yeah, it went international. Yeah, so we started in this tiny market. Then we expanded to 2 markets. Then we went online. Then we started selling in South African stores. And then we got interest from America, from Berlin, from Singapore, from China, Australia, and eventually it was an international business which sold on 5 continents, and had strategic partners and distributors in kind of all of those places, which were ordering from us and then selling and ordering from us again. And it was quite surreal actually, because it was our first business, first really big business, and you kind of just learning and going with it, and you don't really know what to do, and you just going with the flow and trying to figure it out as it happens to you. And it was incredible. It was really, really quite incredible. It was, one of the best times of my life.
You started getting this traction, and then at what stage did you decide to make the decision to now take your business remotely and travel?
So that was probably mostly Georgie, actually. She's always traveled. She's massive traveler. And we were kind of I just moved to Australia, and I was there for about 6 months. And we were like, no, we actually want to go do something. Can we run this business while we travel? And we decided that we could. So we prepared everything. We put our stuff in a bunch of fulfillment, basically warehouses. We just sent stock to fulfillment warehouses in South Africa and in Australia. We didn't take our laptops, and we set up some automatic email replies. And we said, cool, we're going to run this business from our phones. We're going to deal with everyone via email. We're still going to post on social media. I remember writing a blog post, like I think 30 or 40 mini blog posts, like 400-word blog post on photography, because that was kind of our business. We sold these little gadgets, but we positioned ourselves as a lifestyle company which made life better, which enabled you to capture your experiences in a way you couldn't before, and therefore share your experiences or look back on your memories, sort of filtered, as everyone wants to do. And so a part of that was becoming a bit of thought leaders, and part of that was obviously blog posts and articles. So yeah, we prepped for about a month, and then we were like, cool, we're going to run it from our phones. And often we didn't have internet for days, and we couldn't reply to customer emails and stuff, but it all worked. We came back after 2 months, and everything was still working. Nothing had caught on fire. We didn't have any big, anything bad happen. So yeah, we just. I don't know.
It's very cool to hear. I can just see your expression as well. It's what a time. That's I want to use that sort of energy and just put it into a bit more about what you're currently doing at the moment. And the caption, which I think was quite profound with me when again doing some preparation around Mielie Mailer, was and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was something that said to help make better choices for businesses and humans, which is why the company sort of exists. It's there to to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to paraphrase this incorrectly, but it's a completely 100% compostable plastic alternative to your traditional delivery sleeves, essentially, and packages.
Yes.
How did the idea of Mielie Mailer come to be? And it when it's Instalens lasted for in the 20.
So
at what stage after did Mielie Mailer come in after Instalens?
So Instalens happened. We traveled for a good while. Lived in a van in quite a few different countries in Iceland as well, in the UK as well. Traveled Europe, and then came back to finish my studies because I dropped out of university for Instalens. And I started studying again and studying economics and stats. Did another year and a half of that before I was like, I can't be studying. I love education, and I really appreciate education, and I'm learning every day. I'm continually reading and researching and learning, because learning is such a beautiful thing. But the classroom was not where I wanted to be and where I needed to be, especially looking at Greta Thunberg's actual cause for people to actually take action. And what she said, where why should I care about my education if you don't care about my future? In response to people saying, why aren't you at school during her Friday school strikes? So then I studied for a year and a half, and I was kind of a bit lost. I'd come from this really big high of Instalens and traveling, really enjoyed the first year of study. So I was still on that high. And then it suddenly hit me that I don't know what I want to do with my life. Do I want to, what? I'm 20. At that point I was 26. Who am I? What do I care about? What do I want to do? And that's kind of when the whole Vipassana thing happened. And Vipassana happened pre Mielie Mailer, and it really made me think, what do I care about in life? What is important to me? And what sort of change do I want to make in the world? And, Mielie Mailer came from the fact that I care deeply about the environment, which is evident by my choice to be vegan. But also that I care deeply about people and that I love business. So I needed to kind of combine all that. So like I did after watching Conspiracy, I went on this massive education binge. What is really bad in the planet? What is destroying our planet? And climate change, obviously, the plastic crisis, obviously another one. And I said, well, can I combine the two of those in the context of South Africa? Because overseas, you got all these incredible companies, making change. But in South Africa, you have incredible companies, but on a much smaller scale. And there are a lot of opportunities that people aren't thinking about targeting. It's kind of unseen. And one of those was courier delivery sleeves. There are 100 million a year in South Africa, which is an unfathomable amount. 100 million, single-use bags, which are being used and then thrown away, after one use. And it's something that, as I learn more and more, I'm just like, how did we get to this point in life where we live this disposable and throwaway lifestyle? How can we think it's okay to use something once and throw it away? You go back 50 years, that was unthinkable. Like, use something once, throw it away. The idea that companies create products with planned obsolescence, which is another thing which I can't deal with. Companies literally create microwaves or create computers or create shoes with the idea that in a year or in 2 years or in 3 years, the item is going to break at a planned time just after warranty. So you have to buy it again. And it's such a short-sighted approach to anything, because it's entirely profit driven and growth driven, which I think is one of the big problems with our world at the moment. And it's not thinking about the resources that are required to make that every time, and the strain you put in on the environment and on the people and all that stuff. But anyway, back to Mielie Mailer. So yeah, just this opportunity of retail e-commerce in South Africa is one of the fastest growing sectors in the country. It's showing really good growth, even as our economy has struggled. Online retail has kind of remained constant and has continually surged. And there was a big plastic problem in retail. Packaging in general is really quite bad. So yeah, we did some research and we started Mielie Mailer to, first of all, just give people an option. People can't really make change if there's nothing to change to. That's something we really believe in. So we were like, well, let's give people the option to change. And to educate. I think that's a big problem with businesses as well, is they make the excuse that they will only change when consumers demand them to change. But if the business isn't educating and no one's educating the consumer, then how is the consumer ever going to know that they need to change or that what they're doing is wrong? So Mielie Mailer, it was idea to give people the choice to change, the idea to educate and inform, and the idea to also, long term, maybe act as a model for other businesses to follow, that you can actually do business in a way that is kind to the environment, that is kind to people, that isn't traditional business where it's profit, where it's actually, let's think about the planet first, let's think about people first, let's think about profit second, and actually still thrive. And I think that's the grand goal.
Really, really powerful. A story which has stuck with me in our first meeting. You mentioned how there was this period where you went around trying to educate businesses, where you actually physically walked into offices, I think it was, with a bag full of. Can you? Sorry, I don't remember it clearly, obviously, but can you explain that one more time?
Yeah.
Just highlight what that actually did to the people that you were speaking to, and perhaps how did you use it as your pitching tool?
As pitching tool, yeah, sure. So I called it Project Cushion. I like having funny, quirky names for things, and I do. And what I did was I took a bunch of our bags, our Mielie Mailers, and I stuffed them with old office paper, shredded office paper, and turned them into these big billowing cushions. And inside I wrote a note, and the note was kind of, hey, this is who we are. This is what our product is, and this is why you should get on board, basically. And I put a sticker on it, almost like a fake courier sticker, and walked into different places. I walked into media houses, I walked into businesses, and funnily enough, having a van, I have a van, and walking in with a bag, I was led into any place I wanted. I was like a career guy, I was just like, yeah, I'm delivering this. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Just kind of let you through. So secret, if you ever want to get into any place. Exactly. And carry a box, with a sticker on it into a building. So yeah, I met up with all these businesses and all these important people. I did my research. I went onto LinkedIn first and saw who were the higher ups and where they which offices they worked in, whether in the Cape Town branch, whether in the Johannesburg branch, whatever. Found the people I needed to contact. So when I went to the reception office, I said, hi, I'm delivering this for this person. And almost always that got me into a face-to-face situation with someone quite important in the business. And these people were always kind of taken aback, like, who's this guy trying to pitch me this thing? Like, how did he even get in front of me? Like, this is almost like not on. Like, what's he doing here? But then, as I spoke about the product, and with Mielie Mailer, I speak with a lot of passion because it's something I'm super passionate about, and I think people see that, and with anything in life, people are drawn to passion. Passion is contagious. So speaking to these people in important positions in plastic and this and that and da. It got them excited, and often it led to meetings with key stakeholders in the business. It led to real action in the business, and amazingly, and I guess unsurprisingly, you got some businesses which were so excited and so drawn and so passionate about this, and other businesses who weren't. And oftentimes, it wasn't the business you thought it was going to be, but then in hindsight, you realize, no, that actually makes perfect sense. And an example is Yoko. Yoko is, South African payment business, and I initially approached them thinking they have all these small vendors in this incredible database. Potentially, me approaching them would just give me access to that database so I can actually approach their customers. Wasn't trying to approach Yoko, but Yoko ended up being our first big client, and they worked so fast. Being a small young company with a mindset similar to me and you, where it's not this American idea of business of profit, where it's more like a holistic approach, people, the planet, etc. They changed to plastic-free packaging for all their card machine deliveries, not because their customers were demanding it. And they're not even a B2C business. They're a business. So their customers would probably never demand this. They changed it completely because they wanted to actually do better, which I thought was incredible. And then other companies that you think are perceived to be the biggest environmental companies in South Africa, certain e-commerce stores and stuff, that I thought would jump on board in a second. They have actually dragged their feet or flat out said, no, we're not actually interested in going plastic free, which, it's amazing how you have all these preconceived ideas and notions. And now continually you proved wrong time and time again. And I think it's a broader lesson in life that you should never walk into a situation thinking the outcome or thinking or just generalizing or judging, I think. But yeah, the whole Project Cushion was a massive success, and it led to most of our current business, and it was fun. I got to meet some
I read
cool people.
That there was a term that we used actually, which is, I suppose, it's somewhat quite sad for those that were resistant to that sort of change. Coined greenwashing, where the if I understood it correctly, the appearance was that there was a lot of conscious effort and decision making around doing good towards the environment, and there are present about what's going on. But in the name, I suppose it's not quite what they're delivering upon, and they're not quite following what they're saying, which is a bit sad. I mean, it's obviously it's not necessary to mention any names, but it's obviously a little bit sad to see that there is some form of hesitation or uncertainty, and you would think, especially in our country and in today's day and age, there'd be more reception around, or tell me more, at least educate us more. What does the bottom line look like if we adjust? Like, what are the kind of conversations that we would be expected to be having? But you firsthand had the experience of just people dragging their feet and people being resistant in some way, which is a little bit sad. I find it exceptionally, I just find it exceptionally interesting. I think the golden thread, which I feel coming throughout our conversation, has just been like there's been an excessive sense of like awareness that you've had, in your own life. And we haven't even touched on some of your personal background in dealing with China at the age of 10 or 11, I think it was, or for the last 10 or 11 years. We haven't even touched on a variety of like experiences and lessons that you might have had living out of the van, and what that led to into your way of being, a way of doing business, from Insulens through to Mielie Mailer. But what I get from the conversation is like there's always been this do good, and there's always been, as you were saying, how much decision or change can you help a person make just through like their education, and how much more impact, even if it's the most minute difference, minute change, like can that do? And it's ultimately related into two business ideas that have been very, very successful for you as well. It's testimony to the kind of work that you do and the kind of perspective that you have on business and on the environment and yourself, that it only speaks miles. And I'm sure it's just going to cascade, and it's going to create more and more, hopefully more and more momentum as the days go on.
I hope so.
Can you, Martin, ask one or two more questions around specifically Mielie Mailer? What's next? What can we expect, or where can people expect to see these cushions, if they are like pop up? When can I get your hands on a set or a pair?
So hopefully consumers will start seeing them, after this whole lockdown. E-commerce business will be back up and running, and deliveries will start happening. A lot of those deliveries are hopefully going to be in our bags. We've sold quite a bit, and it's quite nice. We have a yardstick. It's incredible actually. Every bag that is sold, every delivery that happens in our bag is one less plastic bag that's actually being used and produced, and it's incredible. And it's also every bag that's delivered contributes to the planting of a tree as well. So, so after this whole lockdown, you should start seeing them being delivered, which is super exciting, by Yoko, by small businesses throughout South Africa. Then obviously, the next for Mielie Mailer, I think we've already started. Okay. We're about to launch a bubble wrap alternative. Bubble wrap is also a massive issue. So it's a plastic-free bubble wrap alternative. Hopefully business start using that in tandem with our mailers, which I'm super excited about. So
I haven't actually asked you, what is it made of? How is it 100% bio? There's a difference between and the last you corrected me last time, biodegradable versus compostable. What are your products made of?
Yes. So first of all, biodegradable, compostable. Compostable is basically a subset of biodegradable. Biodegradable it will eventually biodegrade in CO2, water, and organic matter. Compostable is it will degrade into those elements, but within a specified time frame and in specified conditions. So our bags are home compostable, which means 6 months in your back garden, they're going to disappear into water, carbon dioxide, and some organic matter, which can then be eaten by earthworms, be put in your compost heap, and you can actually grow food with that kind of compost, and it's not bad for you or toxic at all. Our bags are a special polymer blend, and the blend is what gives us its compostability. It's PLA, which is polylactic acid, made from corn starch, and this another polymer called PBAT. Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce its full name. It's an insanely long name. But basically, it acts as the catalyst for the compostability. So it kind of allows the PLA, which is made from corn or agricultural waste, it allows this PLA to break down. It's almost like it excites the kind of the polymer or molecular chains, and enables them to kind of it weakens them and enables then the microorganisms, the bacteria, and the kind of sun and moisture to kind of break it down further.
Simple.
So yeah, that's what it's made out of.
Sounds simple. Just a couple of acronyms.
Yeah, simple. Exactly.
Compostable products.
Exactly.
I'm excited to see the coming of the bubble wrap as well. You're gonna have to start sharing. I will certainly, as soon as I get my hands on, I will make sure to circulate it around all forms of networks that I have. So don't you worry. Be a big supporter of you
there. Fantastic.
Trent, there's a hell of a lot more I want to dig into, and a hell of a lot more I want to have a conversation around, which I think we're going to have to come back to at some stage. But this gave us a great introduction to a bit more about you, which, as you might know, I'm obsessed about the individual and how someone can take their experiential learning, so what you've actually physically gone through and the emotion and experiences of a certain period in your life, and turn it into a form of mastery. It's not that you are the sensei of what you're doing, and I'm sure you'll be the first to say you don't
far
know
from it.
You alluded to it a few times that you're continually, like, if you have expectations, you continue just being proven wrong. And I really enjoyed just understanding a bit more about your way of thinking and your processing. But we're going to have to come back for a second or two to unpack a bit more of your experiences around business, and especially the experiences around living in a van for 2 to 3 years, which is on my bucket list at some stage. I don't know if you can do that around Cape Town. I might be able to sort of make a plan, but it doesn't have the same romance.
No, it doesn't. You got it in America. That's kind of where it all started, right?
There's a lot for us to still talk about. So we'll have to come back and reschedule one of those. But I want to thank you for your time so far this morning. And we'll definitely
thanks for having me.
Again. I'll shoot through a few times for us to schedule another chat, and we'll get you just a volume 2 rolling out as soon as possible. I wish you well on this
fantastic
further, and we'll connect again very, very soon.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate the time and all of this, and it's been so nice chatting to you. Your questions always make me think, and I love
Thanks
that.
very much, James. Catch you soon. Hey guys, Matt here again. Just before you run off, thank you for lending me your ears and tuning in once again. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation, and of course I would love to hear any sort of feedback you might have. You can do so through all forms of social media, really. I've probably spammed enough about that, or through my email, which is outcomepodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you and even to say hello. For those that have any advice on long distance recording, please feel free to share and send through a few links as well. I am an open book and am willing to learn. As usual, if you have any other news, please pass it through. And if you haven't yet subscribed or shared the podcast via the very many links that you could potentially find it on, I encourage you to do so too. Looking forward to hearing from you, and until then, cheers.